Welcome to the presentation of the MEDINA system. As a first step, we have to log into the user interface, which is browser-based, either with a local user account or with a federated single sign-on account. Let's start by using the Bosch identity provider for single sign-on. So we enter our credentials into the system, and this is going to take us to the main screen associated to the MEDINA Framework, where we can see the overall composition with the different components of the framework as a welcome page. Here we have the option to visit the different components of MEDINA by following the workflow that have been designed for it. Let's start by visiting the catalog of metrics and controls. In the catalog, we can see at the moment the EUCS catalog, which stands for the EU Cloud Services Certification Scheme, which is in the focus of MEDINA. In the catalog, we can navigate among the different categories of the standard by following, for example, the different sets of controls. Inside the controls, we can also navigate between the different security controls, technical and organizational measures. And if that is the case, we can also go one further level to visit the individual metrics that have been designed for each one of the tomes from the EUCS. Let's see some of the security metrics which are associated to the controls, which are also stored in the catalog. The MEDINA metrics, they follow the structure that has been defined by the project, where we define metrics, compliance metrics, which are associated to different categories of EUCS with a particular focus on those requirements which need continuous or automated monitoring. The metrics, they can be qualitative or they can also be quantitative in nature. And in MEDINA, we are also proposing in the catalog for each one of the metrics a target value, which is the one that is going to provide either the compliance or the no compliance assessment with the platform. Once that we have the EUCS catalog into MEDINA, the next step is to actually start with the assessment of the platform where we want to apply EUCS. This is what we call the orchestrator, and the orchestrator gives us the chance to define the cloud services that we want to assess. In this particular case, we are doing the assessment of an existing cloud service which is running on a testbed that is hosted by Bosch in one major hyperscaler. We can do the assessment of the different requirements associated to the platform, either by allowing the default target values that are associated to each one of the metrics in EUCS in the catalog, or we also have the possibility to customize the target value of some specific metrics by selecting the corresponding requirement for which we want to apply some sort of customization. So let's select these two requirements in order to do the customization of the target values, and then we click on Save. Once that information has been saved, in order to do the customization of the target value that is expected for the metric, we go to the next component, which is the requirements and obligations component, which exposes an API in the graphical interface, which is the CNL editor. The CNL editor is going to allow us to do the customization of values associated to the metrics that we have selected in the previous step. So let's take a look at one in particular. So for each one of these metrics, what we call a RIO object, it is possible to visualize information about the actual security control that is associated to the metric, the catalog, which of course in this particular case is EUCS, the nature of the control, and more important, we are also able to see which are the policies that are being associated to this specific requirement. In this case, we have two different options. Either the associated metrics are directly coming from the catalog, as we have previously seen, or in Medina, we are also using natural language processing techniques in order to make sure that the requirements, they can also be associated to additional metrics which are being identified by the use of such NLP techniques. So in this particular case, we see that there are two metrics which are hard-coded that are coming from the catalog and are associated to this requirement, but we also see an additional set of metrics which are directly associated from the recommender thanks to the application of the NLP techniques developed in Medina. So let's go one step back. Once that we have the different requirements for which we want to do the customization, we select it on the CNL editor. We click on edit. Then we proceed to either customize some particular target value. For example, for this specific metric, let's do a customization of the TLS version. The default version of the TLS that is being used for the assessment is 1.2. So let's customize it so that the assessment is done versus version 2.2 of the TLS. We also have the possibility to remove some of the metrics that we don't want to be assessed. And once that we have finalized with the customization of the metrics associated to the requirement, we do click on update so that the Rego object is updated on the platform. This is going to take us to the previous screen of the CNL editor, gives a new version of the Rio object. And last but not least, we have to tell the system that this Rio object is already in a good shape, so we can complete the process. Once that the Rio object has been completed, it means that this assessment, this specific set of metrics, are being sent to the Medina orchestrator so that the evidence that is being taken from the deployed testbed can be assessed with respect to the configured target values. Just for completeness, let me show the state diagram of the CNL editor, where, as visualized before, we depart from a customized Rio object. Once that the target values have been edited, then this Rio object is moved to the completed state. And as mentioned before, with this completed state, we can go back to the orchestrator, take a look at the actual assessments that are running on the platform. And as we can see, some of the assessments, for example, the TLS version and the other metric, which is address encryption enabled, they have already started to be continuously assessed based on the target values that have been refined by the CNL editor. However, this is only one of the specific features or assessments in Medina, because apart from supporting the assessment of technical metrics, Medina also supports the assessment of organizational metrics. What I mean with that is the following. So Medina has another component, which is called the Assessment and Management of Organizational Evidence, AMOE. In this particular component, what is possible to do is to perform the automated assessment of documentation that where is defined the security policy of the cloud provider, the security concept, security procedures. This documentation is uploaded to Medina so that it can be assessed by the AMOE component. So let's upload one of the documents associated to our security concept. And the assessments that are being done, as we can see here, these are being already processed with some of the security metrics that have been configured for organizational evidence. Once that the document has been processed also by using NLP techniques in order to find the specific values that corresponds to the organizational metrics, those values are compared versus the expected target value, and then a pre-assessment of the organizational evidence is provided so that it can be confirmed by the auditor and then submitted to Medina for evaluation together with the technical evidence. Let's see how it works in practice with one of the documents which has been previously uploaded to the platform. So we click on the PDF that has been already assessed by the AMOE component because it was previously uploaded. And here, for example, we can see for different values, the metric in this particular case is an assessment question, and the assessment question is being answered by the AMOE component based on an internal NLP-based system. So in this particular case, let us check, for example, for one particular metric. We have a question that is associated to the assessment of this organizational metric that is related to the frequency to which the backups are being performed. And in this particular case, the NLP system is already suggesting an answer associated to this particular assessment question. In order to verify either in a positive or in a negative way the suggested answer that has been provided by the AMOE component, we go to check into further details related to this particular requirement. We see some description of the requirement, and then we can also see the automated answering system output, which has to do with the answer that has been found thanks to the application of the NLP techniques. And in this particular case, we can scroll down directly to the answer that has been found on the PDF document associated to our PDF, our security concept. We can then, as auditors, decide if the provided answer is actually compliant or non-compliant with our expectations. So in this particular case, let us choose that this is compliant. Let us add a comment. This is a compliant value. And then as an auditor, I'm going to submit this assessment to the orchestrator. When the assessment is submitted to the orchestrator, what we are going to see is that when we return to the, okay, now it has been successfully sent. So we go back to the orchestrator, once again to the assessments. And what we can see here is that the organizational assessments that have been generated by the AMOE component are being combined with the assessments that have been done by the technical evidence collector of Medina in order to make an holistic evaluation, aggregate the different results, and provide an overall compliant or non-compliant value associated to each one of the requirements in the EUCS catalog. This is something that we can visualize in the continuous certificate evaluation, where we can navigate a tree that represents the EUCS catalog, And for each one of the categories in the catalog, we can see the compliance status. For each one of the compliances and non-compliances, in this case identified in red, we can further visualize more details about the specific requirement that has been compliant or non-compliant. And from the specific resources, we can obtain further information, which is going to tell us if the compliance was associated or where the compliance has been associated, if it has been to a specific resource type, if it has been to some specific resource ID. In this particular case, this is a real virtual machine that is running in our Bosch testbed, and the specific identifier of the requirement and the metric which has provided the non-compliant status, and further information so that we can do as, for example, governance team or security operators, a traceability in order to fix the non-compliance, and that is going to help us at the end of the day to obtain a compliant status for the whole EUCS catalog, and this is going to provide us at some point the fully achievement in all the different requirements, which is going to be represented by a corresponding certificate being used to the infrastructure. This again can be seen in the Clouditor component in our orchestrator, where the aggregation of the different assessments that have been performed, technical and organizational, as seen before, they can be derived in a certificate that is associated to the cloud service. And this certificate, based on that aggregation and based on an internal risk assessment that is performed by Medina, we can change the status based on the different statuses that have been defined by EUCS in the core document.